You're tuned into the Now Morning Show, where the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago is helping us to understand the basics of adoption.
Inside your spotlight this morning, the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago is joining us in the form of Case Management Officer of the Adoption Unit, Maria Donald. Good morning to you, Maria.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
So far, so good. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you
We're
for
talking
having me.
adoption,
Yeah.
right? So last week we spoke foster care
Yeah.
and becoming foster parents, and we learned about that journey. Tell me, what is adoption exactly?
Okay, so adoption basically involves transferring all of the legal rights and responsibilities for a child from the biological parents to the adoptive parents. So basically, someone is going to assume full legal responsibility for a child that is not biologically theirs.
And that is what it means to be an adoptive parent, is to assume that responsibility.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. What are the requirements to become an adoptive parent?
It's quite an extensive process in that, we have to do due diligence to ensure that we place the nation's children with people who are fit to care for them. So if I was to summarize it quickly, the process comprises of 3 interviews, right? So you'll have to undergo a background check, a psychological assessment, a home assessment, and submit some medical and other supporting documents, right? All of that is compiled into a report. It goes before our adoption committee. They are the ones who make final decisions.
Yeah.
Once they approve the application, then the adoptive parent will, the applicant will then have to obtain an attorney who will file on their behalf before the Family Court of Trinidad and Tobago for the grant of the adoption order. Only when the order is granted by the court, then the adoption is finalized, right?
Okay, so this is after the 3 interviews.
Yes.
After the psychological assessments, after the
Background
medical,
check.
the background check.
Home assessment.
Home assessment.
Yeah.
All of these things happen, and then we can go to the court to deal with it from that side.
Well,
of
then
things.
it'll have to go to the adoption committee
Right.
as a committee of our
After
board.
after they approve.
Right, so once they approve,
Right.
then it can go to court. And the court ultimately has the final decision.
Right.
So we can make a recommendation, but the court can determine if they think, they would approve the application for the order to be granted or not.
What are some of the things that would make you not get that approval from even the board level, from your board?
Well, what I would say is that we try to work with people as much as possible. So in many instances, if there may be a challenge, let's say the home is unsafe or not fit for a child,
Right.
the committee would defer the case and give the applicant an opportunity to address the things that they think need to be fixed.
So it's not just like an outright blank, is this is what's wrong. And
That
you
is
need to-
not the usual course of action.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's help them along with whatever. But how are you helping them with the psychological part
Well,
of things?
so what happened is we have service providers like psychologists who will conduct the assessment
Right.
and they will make recommendations.
Okay.
So they may recommend, for instance, the person should undergo parenting training or individual therapy or something. So we would prepare a referral for the person and they would engage in sessions. And once we receive the all clear from their service provider that they satisfy the recommendation that was made, then we can take it back to the committee and say, well, the recommendation was fulfilled and we recommend that they be approved at this time.
Is there, like, if you get denied, for example, right? Or, you have whatever challenges.
Okay.
Is there a time frame that you have to be able to sort it out in, or is it that you can just reapply whenever you're ready?
You don't have to, your case is not closed off in the
Okay.
first instance. The case remains open. Your caseworker is still in contact with you, still checking in with you, also probably liaising with the other service provider who may be doing the actual therapy, because we don't do those things internally.
Of course.
So we're not going to provide therapy and stuff to clients. So they would find another psychologist or service provider. We would liaise with all parties involved. So the case is still open.
Right.
Right? There's not necessarily a time frame per se, but it's kind of a case-by-case basis. So if there are unnecessary delays or drags, we may have to close off the application. But we stick with the applicants as much as we can until the end to see them through until the point of approval.
In your communication with the applicants, what have they said is the most difficult part of the process?
This is an easy question. I would say because most people have a challenge with the weights, the period between when they are approved by the committee, and just to go back a bit, in instances where applicants are waiting for the authority to place a child with them, once they are approved by the committee, what's going to happen is their names will be placed on a list of suitable persons. Right? And they're going to wait on the list, basically, until a child becomes available to be matched with them, because we don't have a pool of children to just match people with, right? So what will happen in that instance, only when they are matched, they will begin interaction sessions with the child. So that will form an initial bond. The caseworker will monitor how those sessions are going. If that goes well, then they move on to the probationary period. That's a period of 6 months where the child is placed to live in their care. Right? And the caseworker continues to monitor, make visits, schedule and impromptu. And when the 6 months is completed, at that point, that is when that matter would go to court. The attorney will file before the court for the order to be granted.
That's
and so
after
on.
the 6 months?
After the 6 months, right? So
okay.
when people are waiting for the authority to place a child with them, they have to go through that waiting process. And that is easily the most challenging part of the process because, as I mentioned, we don't have a pool of children. So once people are approved, we have to wait until a child matches their profile becomes available.
Yeah. Now, I hear you and you say you don't have a pool of children waiting to be adopted, but there are many children who need adoptive parents, no?
Well, there are many children who are on the state care, I would say.
Yeah,
but not all of them are freed for adoption. So there's an entire legal process where that child has to go through to be freed for adoption before they can be matched to a prospective adoptive parent.
What is the process?
It involves the relinquishment of the birth parents' rights.
Okay.
Right? And that is something that, for different reasons may not be as plausible as every time, right? And in many instances, sometimes with children in homes and so on, we may be exploring reintegration or kinship arrangements or something towards that end. Adoption is not necessarily the first resort. We try to exhaust the options. We try to be reintegrated with their family before we pursue adoption. So the children are in homes, but they're not necessarily candidates for adoption.
Okay, and that's a good point to clear because I think people just automatically assume that is the case. You mentioned just now in terms of the biological parents, right? If it is that these children are in homes and you're trying to reintegrate with their biological parents, you do the same psycho tests and the safety tests for the house and all the tests that you put the adoptive parents, should you also ask that of the biological parents?
To be fair, that's not necessarily on the purview of adoption, right? Because the adoption unit. So when we speak of adoption, we focus in on matching the children with adoptive families.
Okay.
If it comes to reintegration, it will be some other unit,
it's
maybe
a different unit
IIU or foster care. But they do due diligence ensure before the recommendation is made for the child to be reintegrated that everything is fit. They may refer parents for parenting training or whatever resource they think would equip them to receive the child back into their care.
What determines if a child and an adoptive parent is a good match?
That's a very good question. So parents, applicants, in their application form, there's a child profile. So they get to determine preferences, feel like a way to put it. So what they desire in a child that they wish to adopt. So male or female, age range, different social circumstances they're willing to accept, stuff like that. And well, obviously that's the first consideration when it comes to matching. And essentially that's how matches are done on the basis of the child profile as selected by the applicant. But as I mentioned, the first step after match is interaction sessions. So 1 hour per week for a period of 10 weeks, the child and the applicant would bond, right? And the caseworker is observing closely to see if we think it's not just a good matching basis of the factors in the application form, like the child profile, but the interaction itself, what the chemistry is like, how the applicant is interacting with a specific child. And throughout that process, we can determine it's not going to go forward anymore. And the applicant could decide that they're not comfortable with the interactions, and they could also decide it's not a good match at that point.
I mean, I don't know if you have the actual data on you, right? But maybe you can give me an average or an estimate as to how many times, let me say out of 10 times, that we have good matches first time out, or do we have to
No, we always have excellent matches.
Always, you say, no?
I say that in that we, as I mentioned in the beginning, we do due diligence and ensure that the people that are approved for adoption are people who are really selfless, really desire to care for a child, to provide a safe home for children who may be in need of that. And we work with children and parents. So it may start off a little rocky sometimes. It may maybe minimal engagement and so on, but I can tell you, more times than not, it progressed really well. And even post the probationary period, when the child is integrated into the family officially, adoptive parents always provide us with updates and us little photos and stuff. And it's almost amazing to see transformation and the way these children fall into these families. And if you don't know that they're adopted, you really would not know that they are adopted. Okay, understood.
Yeah. And what if somebody wants to give their child up for adoption? How does that part of it work?
So if someone is interested in giving their child up for adoption, firstly, I would really like to emphasize that is an option, right? Because in Trinidad and Tobago would have different challenges and in life that may make it difficult for someone to care for a child. So adoption is an option. Contact the Children's Authority, contact the adoption unit. We will give you all of the information and walk you through the process of doing so, and something that can be done at birth, right? So to put it in a nutshell, what will happen, we would conduct the necessary interviews and so on with the birth parents, both mother and father. Once the child is delivered, the medical social worker at the hospital will already be aware that the child is for adoption. Right? So the child will be received into the care of the authority, and basically after a 6 weeks period, we could receive consent from the parents, and the child will then be freed for adoption. So that's what I mean when I say the process of the child being freed for adoption before they can then be matched with someone who's on your list waiting to receive a child.
But as from birth you mentioned, right?
Yeah, so...
Is there a different process for if the child is already born and living and the parents realize, I can't do this, I'm not able to do this
it's a different process in that they will have to go through, they will basically make a report to us through the hotline, come through the contact center, and the necessary team within the authority will do an investigation to determine best, like what is most suitable. If it does come and be referred for adoption, it's the same process. You have to relinquish your parental rights, and then the child will then be matched with someone who's on the list and waiting to be
After the parental rights have been relinquished, is there any way for the children to contact their birth parents, or is that a no-no?
Well, at the age of 18, they have the option to have their records unsealed. But it's at the discretion of the court if they would unseal those records, and then the child will have the opportunity to contact their parents. But it's important to know that in giving up the child for adoption, the biological parents have the opportunity to determine if they would like to be contacted at the age of 18, when the child reaches the age of 18. Yeah.
So they can put, don't contact
They
me,
can say that. It is also their right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. In terms of the adoptive parents,
yes.
Are we okay with single parenting adopting?
Yes.
Is that something that's normal, whether it's male or female?
Yeah. Anyone over the age of 18 years can adopt. So, yeah.
All right. Nice. Tell me about the adoption survey. What is that about?
So right now, the authority is trying to gather information to ensure that the media we're putting out are tailored to the needs of the public. You know, the thing that the public is interested in finding out. So the survey basically is gathering information and data on that so that we can make sure the outreaches and the campaigns and so on that we do would be, you know, addressing the questions that the nation have regarding adoption and so on.
Who's taking the survey?
Well, it's developed internally by our research team and so on, and gather data, and then it would be translated to the necessary teams within the authority who's going to put out the media that will answer the questions that the public has.
Okay, so it's about what people want to know. You're just gathering information.
Essentially.
Take all the questions, and then you will put out information answering
yeah, so
all the
we're going to determine how much people know on the basis of the questions and the answer and so on, the gaps that we see come up, so we could create tailored content, essentially.
When can we expect that content to come out?
I cannot answer that right now, but you know, we are doing the best that we can to ensure that the public is aware, especially within the month of September, which is Adoption and Foster Care Awareness Month. So we're trying to push out as much as we can to make sure that, you know, the conversation is happening.
Yeah, how has the conversation been going so far from your perspective?
September is always a very busy month, I would say, at least for adoption, because we make these kind of media appearances and we're on the radio and the social media conversation is more tailored here. We get a lot of calls, we get a lot of requests for information and that kind of thing. So I would say it's going.
Too?
Yeah, there's a surge in applications. So I would say yes. So I mean, it's a slow ball rolling, but we're happy that we can keep the public minds, you know, at work about the topic.
Possible.
Yeah.
Maria, before we wrap, can you just tell people where they can go to get more information about adoption?
On the Children's Authority website, which is www.ttchildren.org, or they can reach out to the adoption units directly, utilizing the authority's number 627-8597, any extension between 40021 and 40030.
Any number between those numbers.
Any extension within that range, you get someone from the adoption unit who can provide you with all the information that you may be desiring.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Maria. All the best in the work that you're doing, because I think it's definitely essential work, and I hope that people are able to reach out and apply and see, or at least get the information so that you can see if maybe adoption is a process that you want to go through, because there's a child out there who might just need you. Yeah? Let's take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.